tell you what he has said in the previous para, and then we will proceed with the next para. So, in the previous para, he is saying, although unknowable to our limited and fragmented mind, it can be known by identity. What can be known? The supreme reality. It can be experienced by spiritual intuition, which is beyond mind. Okay? You can't know it with the mind, you can't know God with the mind, but you can know it by spiritual intuition, by identity. Okay? Though ineffable, it can't be put into words, it can be represented to the mind in symbols. Okay? But the language used cannot be rigid, logical, okay, mentalized. It has to be a plastic, flexible, poetic language which uses the logic of the infinite. A language similar to the Vedas or the Upanishads. This is basically what he's saying. The divine cannot be known by the mind. You have to go beyond the mind to know the divine. And you can, intuition, you can get some idea of the divine. At the highest level, you can know the divine by becoming the divine. But the mind cannot know it. The mind can have approximations. It can, through vague ideas, not very vague as you keep going higher and higher, but vague ideas. Divine is omnipotent, divine is omnipresent, divine is omniscient, all these things. But this is not the reality. You have to have an absolute experience of it. That means only by identity. That's what basically he is saying. So now shall we start reading the next para? So, Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara, Maya, Prakriti, Shakti is the chapter. So, the supreme truth aspect. Somebody has to read it's a huge, yeah, 1.5 pages. Who will read?
I will read.
Okay, go ahead.
The supreme truth aspect, which does manifest itself to us, is an eternal and infinite and absolute self-existence, self-awareness, self-delight of being. This founds all things and secretly supports and pervades all things. This self-existence reveals itself again in three terms of its essential nature: self, conscious being or spirit, and God or the divine being. The Indian terms are more satisfactory. Brahman, the reality is Atman, Purusha, Ishvara. For these terms grew from a root of intuition, and while they have a comprehensive preciseness, are capable of a plastic application which avoids both vagueness in the use and the rigid snare of a too limiting intellectual concept. The supreme Brahman is that which is in Western metaphysics is called the Absolute. But Brahman is at the same time the omnipresent reality in which all that is relative exists as its forms or its movements. This is an absolute which it takes all relatives in its embrace. The Upanishads affirm that all this is the Brahman. Mind is Brahman, life is Brahman, matter is Brahman. Addressing Vayu, the Lord of air, of life, it is said, O Vayu, thou art manifest Brahman, and pointing to man and beast and bird and insect, each separately is identified with the one. O Brahman, thou art this old man and boy and girl, this bird, this insect. Brahman is the consciousness that knows itself in all that exists. Brahman is the force that sustains the power of God and Titan and demon, the force that acts in man, in an animal, and the forms and energies of nature. Brahman is the Ananda, the secret bliss of existence, which is the ether of our being, and without which none could breathe or live. Brahman is the inner soul in all. It has taken a form in correspondence with each created form which it inhabits. The Lord of beings is that which is conscious in the conscious being, but he is also the conscious in inconscient things. The one who is master in control of the many that are passive in the hands of a false nature. He is the timeless He is the timeless and time. He is a space and all that is in space. He is a causality and the cause and the effect. He is the thinker and his thought, the warrior and his courage, the gambler and his dice throw. All realities and all aspects and all semblances are the Brahman. Brahman is the absolute, the transcendent and incommunicable, the supracosmic existence that sustains the cosmos, the cosmic self that upholds all beings. But it is too the self of each individual. The soul or psychic entity is an eternal portion of the Ishvara. It is a supreme nature or consciousness force that has become the living being in a world of living beings. The Brahman alone is, and because of it, all are, for all are the Brahman. This reality is the reality of everything that we see in self and nature. Brahmans, the Ishvara, is all this by his Yogamaya, by the power of his consciousness force, put out in self-manifestation. He is the conscious being, soul, spirit, Purusha, and it is by his nature, the force of his conscious self-existence, that he is all things. He is the Ishvara, the omniscient and omnipotent all-ruler, and it is by his Shakti, his conscious power, that he manifests himself in time and governs the universe. These and similar statements taken together are all comprehensive. It is possible for the mind to cut and select to build a closed system and explain away all that does not fit within it. But it is on the complete and many-sided statement that we must take our stand if we have to acquire any knowledge.
Okay. So basically, what he is explaining here is that God is everything. Okay? I'm using very simple words. I'm saying God, but you have to think of it as in philosophy, you can't say God because God is personal, where you have to say Sat Chit Ananda. What is God? Sat Chit Shakti Ananda. Okay? These are the four things which are really one for him. And he is everything. In fact, he's going as far as saying it is a gambler and his dice also. The murderer is not saying. But this is from the Gita. The reference to the Gita, gambler and his dice throw. So God is everything. This is the Advaita philosophy. And the mind cannot understand how can he be the gambler? How can he be the murderer? But if you want the real truth, you have to go and understand everything. So it takes different forms, but essentially it is one. Just like ice, water, water vapor. Okay, they totally three different forms, but it is all essentially water only in different forms. So Brahman is everything. Okay? That's basically what he is expressing in this long para. He can be this, he can be that, he can be everything. So it is like if you want to think of it as take a huge amount of, you have to understand the image in the proper context, okay? You can always find fault with it, but you can always say, take a huge amount of clay, okay? And that clay becomes pots and pans and spoons and bowls and everything in the physical world is made from that Brahman. But Brahman is itself featureless, infinite, eternal, absolutely subtle, free of all features. It is only one substance. And that one substance molds itself into all the forms of the physical world. Okay, that's basically what he's saying. Now, this is in short. If you want, I'll read out the summary again and we will go through each sentence. The supreme truth shows itself to man as self. Okay, that's the first, which is immutable, featureless Brahman. When you make your mind silent, you experience the self. But he can also be, the self is, remember the Brahman is the featureless and also the impersonal. It's an impersonal stretch of infinite peace and calm and release. There's no action there, actionlessness. And but in the second, you can also see the divine as a person, Purusha. And Purusha is there on all the planes. He can be there in the highest plane, he can be there in the lowest plane. Purusha is the personal aspect of the divine. Okay. Everything, this is a concept that you must have clearly in your mind. Okay. The concept is this, that everything that is impersonal has a personal truth behind it. Okay. There is the, take for instance rain. Okay. Rain is impersonal, but there is a personal person representing that rain. Okay. Parjanya. Then take the wind. There is a God representing wind, the personal aspect. The personal and the impersonal are there in every way, everywhere you will see this. Even in the physical world, the personal and the impersonal are there even in all species. Okay. We know, for instance, that in a species, it's a group. It's impersonal. It's a group. But there is always an alpha male. Okay. So take any kingdom. It's a vast kingdom, but there is a king who represents that kingdom. So it's like that. There is always a connection between the two. It's a connection between the grain of salt and the saltiness in the ocean. Okay. One is a very clear personalized form, and the other is formless but everywhere. So impersonality and impersonality are there. So when you talk of the self, immutable feature as Brahman, it is impersonal. But you can experience the divine as a person also, and this person also goes on taking different forms. Okay? At the spiritual planes of consciousness, it is person. At the mental, it's a mental person. Okay? You have the mental Purusha. Behind the mind, there is a Purusha which represents the mind. You have a vital Purusha, you even have a physical Purusha. Okay? So even the physical Purusha is there. This is the second level. Then the third level, conscious being, Purushottama. He is like a king or a god. Okay, Ishvara. He is fully in control of his kingdom and he has created the kingdom. This is the Ishvara level. So three levels. First level, impersonal. Second level, personal, but personal is limited. So you go to the third level where he is both. He is personal as well as impersonal. These are the, very roughly, they correspond to the transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. Okay? So, then he is saying, but this Brahman is in Western philosophy the absolute. The absolute is one, infinite, eternal, without features. Okay? So, because if it had features, it would be limited. So it is absolutely, it is unlimited. That's why it's the opposite of relative. In the relative, everything in the physical world is relative. Relative means that you can have a relation between things. But when there is only oneness, you cannot have any relation. That's the absolute. Okay? But in the Indian concept, in the West it is known as absolute, but in the Indian concept, Brahman is everything. Okay? The Upanishad speaks of Brahman as everything. Man, beast, bird, plant, stone. He is the immutable and the mutable, the infinite and the finite. He is beyond universe and the universe itself. Okay? But the human mind likes to divide, and see separations for clarity's sake, where there are not any separations and not any division, but the mind at its level wants clarity, so it wants to differentiate. Therefore, it has got the capacity of analysis. But the true knowledge, spiritual knowledge, is not analytical, it is synthetic. It sees the whole. Okay? So Srimad is saying, but we must see the whole if we would acquire the integral knowledge of God. This is basically what is done. It's true that at the mental level, there is a certain clarity and division is necessary. But there is no division in the divine. Even in the physical world, there is no division. If you get the spiritual knowledge, you will see that everything is one. Okay? So that's what he's saying in the para. Now, we go back. With this concept, it's easy to understand what he's saying. The supreme truth aspect, the highest, okay, supreme truth aspect, which thus manifests itself to us, is an eternal and infinite and absolute self-existence. It is not created by anything. It is self-existent. The world is created. The world depends upon God. But the God doesn't depend on anybody else. He creates himself. Okay? Self-created. Swayambhu. Okay. Absolute self-existence. Self-awareness. He is also consciousness. Self-delight of being. Self-delight, Ananda. Of being, substance. Okay? This founds all things and secretly supports and pervades all things. So this Brahman consciousness, which is this Satchidananda, he is not using the word Satchidananda, but very clearly it is that. Self-existence, Sat. Self-awareness, Chit. Self-delight, Ananda. So this is it founds all things. Everything is based on Satchidananda. It is Satchidananda, it is self-awareness, self-delight of being. This founds all things and secretly supports and pervades all things. Everything that you see in the physical world, the divine presence is there. This self-existence reveals itself again in three terms of its essential nature, depending on the level at which you are. You can see it as self, you can see it as conscious being or spirit, and God, or the divine being. Okay? So, self is the impersonal, conscious being is the personal, God and the divine being is personal and impersonal at the same time. So instead of using these words, you can use the words self, conscious, Atman, Brahman. First is the Atman, Brahman. And there was a question the other day in another class, what is Atman? Atman is Brahman. Okay? Atman is the self which is infinite, eternal, featureless, pure, absolutely immutable. That is the Atman, which is the Brahman. Yes, tell me. I couldn't understand the question. Huh? Someone is asking a question? Okay, there's no answer, so I will continue. And the divine being is the Ishvara, the three levels. First the impersonal, then the personal, and finally personal, impersonal. He is both. Okay, you can experience the divine in these three ways. The Indian terms are more satisfactory. Brahman, the reality, is Atman. Purusha, Ishvara. Brahman is everything. Okay, the reality is Atman, Purusha, Ishvara. Purusha is the personal aspect. Ishvara, both personal as well as impersonal. Brahman, the reality is Atman, Purusha, Ishvara. For these terms grew from a root of intuition, and while they have a comprehensive preciseness, not the word, okay? The preciseness is not divisive, it is synthetic. Comprehensive preciseness are capable of a plastic application which avoids both vagueness in the use and the rigid snare of a too limiting intellectual concept. In our mental level, we can create all sorts of problems with the divine. Okay, one very interesting one is, can the divine create, if he is omnipotent, can he create a stone which is so heavy that he can't lift it up himself? So this is the mind which is playing tricks with itself. Okay, so if he is omnipotent, can he do that? So create a stone which he can't lift up himself. It's a play of words. Okay, so actually, he is creating so many stones which he doesn't lift up himself, but man can lift up. When he limits himself to that level of the stone, he can lift it up. Okay, I go to the next. The Supreme Brahman is that which in Western metaphysics is called the Absolute. But Brahman is at the same time the omnipresent reality. It is there everywhere, in which all that is relative exists as its forms and its movements. In the immutable and the absolute, there are relatives. Just like the vast sea also has different things in it. Okay, the salt is there everywhere and it can be condensed into a form. It can be condensed into a form. You can get grains of salt from the sea, okay, by doing something. Both are there, and you have to see the how to do that. So this is the Brahman is everything. That's what it basically is saying. The supreme Brahman is that which in Western metaphysics is called the absolute. But Brahman is at the same time the omnipresent reality in which all that is relative exists as its forms or its movements. This is an absolute which takes all relativities in its embrace. It includes all the limitations. In other words, we come back to the same idea of the infinite contains the finite, and the finite also contains the infinite. Okay? The Upanishads affirm that all this is a Brahman. When you say all this in the physical world, all this is Brahman. Mind is Brahman, life is Brahman, matter is Brahman. Addressing Vayu, the Lord of Air, of life, it said, O Vayu, thou art manifest Brahman. And pointing to man and beast and bird and insect, each separately is identified with the one. Okay, all these are really part of the one. O Brahman, thou art this old man and boy and girl, this bird, this insect. Okay. Brahman is the consciousness that knows itself in all that exists. Brahman is the force that sustains the power of God and Titan and demon. Okay? The force that acts in man and animal and forms and energies of nature. Brahman is the Ananda. He is going step by step. It is substance, consciousness, and Ananda. Okay? Brahman is the Ananda, secret bliss of existence, which is the ether of our being, and without which none could breathe or live. This is a reference to the Taittiriya Upanishad. Ananda is there everywhere, and without that Ananda, nothing could live. Okay, you see it as sometimes as the opposite of Ananda, but that's because of a limitation. You remove a limitation, you will see Ananda everywhere. Brahman is the inner soul in all. It has taken a form in correspondence with each created form which it inhabits. It has created all sorts of forms and enters into each form separately. Okay. The Lord of beings is that which is conscious conscious in the conscious being. Okay. The Supreme is there in every conscious being. But he is also the conscious in inconscient things. Not only he is there in animals and men, but he is also there in the inanimate, the stone. Okay. So the one who is master and in control of the many that are passive in his hands, in the hands of force nature. He is the timeless and time. He is everything, right from top to bottom. He is space and all that is in space. Purposely, Sri Aurobindo is going into 1.5 pages to explain that he is everything. He is listing everything. He could have said he is everything, but he is going into great detail. Okay, he is causality. Causality is the law of that which is bound. Okay, there is a cause for everything, and the cause, but he is also the effect. Okay, he is the cause and the effect. He is the thinker and his thought, the warrior and his courage, the gambler and his dice throw. This is there in the Gita. Okay, he is everything. The gambler and his dice throw. As in Sri Aurobindo, the life, when he is in jail, he is seeing the divine, Sri Krishna in all, even the murderers and the thieves, he is seeing the divine. Okay. The murderers and thieves are the outer forms. The divine is there in everything hiding. Okay. Brahman is the absolute, the transcendental, incommunicable. Incommunicable to the mind. Okay. The supracosmic existence that sustains the cosmos. The cosmic self that upholds all beings. It is supracosmic, the transcendent. The cosmic is the cosmic. But it is too the self of each individual. In other words, Brahman can be transcendent, he can be cosmic, and he can also be individual. This soul or psychic entity is an eternal portion of the Ishvara. Everybody's soul is divine in essence, but it takes an individual form. It is his supreme nature or conscious force that has become the living beings in a world of living beings. Okay? Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Riddesha Tishtati. That's it. And the Para Prakriti Jiva Bhuta. The Para Prakriti, the divine Shakti, has become each individual soul. The Supreme Soul has become each individual soul. Again, the concept of the impersonal, infinite, impersonal becomes the personal. The Brahman alone is. Okay? You shouldn't get confused. When Sridhar is using the word is, exists. So you have to read it in this way. The Brahman alone is, okay, exists. And because of it, all are. For all are the Brahman. This reality is a reality of everything that we see in self and nature. Self is the Purusha and nature is Prakriti. Everything that is there. At the lower levels, you see Purusha and Prakriti separately, but as you keep going higher and higher, they become one. Okay? This reality is the reality of everything that we see in self and nature. Brahman, the Ishvara, is all this by his Yoga Maya. He has the power of creating forms, and he makes forms and enters into every form. By the power of his consciousness force, put out in self-manifestation. This is the definition of Maya. The power of creating forms. He is the conscious being, soul, spirit, Purusha, and it is by his nature, the force of his conscious self-existence, that he is all things. He is everything. He is the Ishvara, the omniscient and omnipotent all-ruler, and it is by his Shakti, his conscious power, that he manifests himself in time and governs the universe. These and similar statements taken together are all comprehensive. They seem to be opposite, but they are all comprehensive. The divine is everything. It is possible for the mind to cut and select, to build a closed system and explain away all that does not fit within it. But it is on the complete and many-sided statement that we must take our stand if we have to acquire an integral knowledge. The others' philosophies are taking limited stands, but we will not do that. Sridhar is saying our integral knowledge will include all aspects of the divine. That's basically what he's saying. In short, the divine is everything, including all that you think is non-divine. That's an interesting part. Okay, so he is everything. Apart from him, nothing else exists. Okay, so we can go to the next para. I don't know how big it is. About a page. So we can read. Yeah.
Shall I read?
Yes, go ahead. An absolute eternal.
An infinite self-existence, self-awareness, self-delight of being that secretly supports and pervades the universe, even while it is also beyond it is then the first truth of spiritual experience. But this truth of being has at once an impersonal and personal aspect. It is not only it is the being absolute, eternal, and infinite. As there are three fundamental aspects in which we meet this reality: self, consciousness being, or spirit, and God, divine being, or to use the Indian terms, and the absolute and omnipresent reality. Brahman manifests to us as Atman, Purusha, Ishvara. So too, its power of consciousness appears to us in three aspects. It is the self force of that consciousness, conceptively creative of all things, Maya. It is Prakriti, nature or force, made dynamically executive, working out all things under the witnessing eye of the conscious being. The self or spirit, it is the conscious power of the divine being, Shakti, which is both conceptively creative and dynamically executive of all divine workings. These three aspects and their powers comprise the whole of existence and all nature, and taken together as a single whole, they reconcile the apparent disparateness and incompatibility of the super cosmic transcendence the cosmic universality and the separativeness of our individual existence. The absolute cosmic nature and ourselves are linked to oneness by the triune aspect of the reality. For taken by itself, the existence of the absolute, the supreme Brahman, would be a contradiction of the relative universe, and our own real existence would be incompatible with its state in communication with reality. At present in all relatives, it is absolute independent of all relatives, the absolute basing all relatives, the absolute governing, pervading, constituting all relatives. There is nothing that is not the omnipresent reality. In observing the triple aspect and the triple power, we come to see how this is possible.
Yeah. Okay. So, as usual, I will tell you in brief what he's saying. I'll read out the summary and then we go back into the details. The first truth of spiritual experience is this absolute reality of Sat, self-existence, Chit, self-awareness, self-delight, Ananda, which is extra cosmic, the transcendent aspect. Okay, when you make a mind silent, this is what you experience first. Okay, it is absolute self. Yet, pervades and supports, sustains the universe. It is itself completely featureless, but it supports the universe. That's what Sridhar is saying. It is like the water behind the dam, which is absolutely calm and quiet and inactive, but it is that which actually allows the movement in the physical world. When you open the dam, the water has come out and come out with great force and go in all directions. So this is the image that is given. It is itself featureless but supports all features. It is itself formless but supports all forms. It is itself totally static but it supports all movement. That's what he's saying. Okay? That's the first experience that you have. Then, but this truth is personal as well as impersonal. Therefore, it takes three fundamental forms. Sat becomes the self, Brahman, immutable, impersonal, corresponding to the transcendental. Secondly, it becomes conscious being or spirit, Purusha, corresponding to the cosmic consciousness. Third, the divine being, Purushottama, Ishvara, Master, Lord of creation. Okay, corresponding to the individual. Okay, in a certain sense. Okay, because he can both, personal as well as impersonal. Similarly, to these three aspects of Sat, we have three aspects of Chit Shakti. Okay, power of being, Maya, is power of illusion, corresponding to the transcendental. Prakriti, mechanical unconscious energy corresponding to the cosmic. Third, Shakti, the power of Ishvara combining immutable and the mutable, the infinite and the finite, Saguna and Nirguna corresponding to the individual. When we see and experience all these three aspects of Purusha and Prakriti, then only can we get the integral truth of the supreme reality in which all contradictions disappear and there is a total harmony. So he's saying the divine is personal as well as impersonal. The divine is like water, it is liquid, it is gas, and it is also solid. So it is this. Three aspects. The impersonal, the personal, and the third is both personal as well as impersonal. That's basically what he's saying in the para. Okay? So I read each sentence now. An absolute, eternal, and infinite self-existence. It is eternal and infinite and absolute. Absolute means no features at all, no relativities in it. It is one and absolutely no movement even, because movement means it is limited. It is self-existence, Sat, self-awareness, Chit, self-delight, Ananda, of being existing, okay, that is again substance. that secretly supports and pervades the universe, even while it is also beyond it. It is actually beyond it, but goes on supplying the support. It supplies the support for the universe. If the Brahman is not there, there can be no universe. But if the Brahman is not there, there can be no universe. Okay? But if universe is not there, Brahman can exist because it's a support. That's what it is. And pervades the universe even while it's also beyond it. It's both things. We can't think of that. When we think of a tank of water, it supplies all the taps in the building, but a time can come when it exhausts. All the water is exhausted. But this particular Brahman, the water never gets exhausted. It goes on supporting forever all the activities of all the taps in the building. That's what is an image which you can give to yourself. It is infinite, eternal, and never exhausts itself. And it supports everything in the universe. This support is very interesting. It's going on even now. Okay, new species are being born, new plants are being born. Okay, the mutation of such goes on producing new things. So it is the creative process is eternal. It never stops. But this truth of being has at once an impersonal and a personal aspect. It is not only existence, it is the one being, absolute, eternal, and infinite. Existence is impersonal, but being, a conscious being, is personal. And that he can also be absolute, eternal, and infinite. As there are three fundamental aspects in which we meet this reality, self, conscious being, or spirit, and God. Okay, again I repeat, self is the Atman, the Brahman, impersonal, infinite, eternal, immutable, without movement and without any features. Conscious being, the Purusha. Okay, you can see, you can meet him as a conscious being, and God, the divine being, is the both. He can be personal as well as impersonal. To use the Indian terms and the absolute and omnipresent reality, Brahman manifests to us as, so he is using the word now, Atman, Purusha, Ishvara. Atman corresponds to Brahman, Purusha corresponds to the cosmic aspect, and the Ishvara corresponds to the transcendent aspect. So too, its power of consciousness appears to us in three aspects. It's not only the Sat that appears in three, the Chit that appears in three, the Anand also appears in three, and also that's what he's now telling us, the power of consciousness also appears in three aspects. And what are those? It is the self-force of that consciousness, conceptively creative of all things. Maya, it is Prakriti, nature or force made dynamically executed, working out all things under the witnessing eye of the conscious being, the self of the spirit. It is conscious power of the divine Shakti. So again, he is telling you that the world can be seen as empty forms. It can be seen as real forms of mechanical energy, and it can also be seen as the power of the divine. Okay, so Maya, Prakriti, Shakti. Maya is images which seem to be unreal. At one level, you see it like that. At another level, you see that the world is not unreal, but it is only mechanical, unconscious energy. Okay. And the third level, when you go, the same thing appears in a different way. You see that it is your own power that is creating all these things. That's basically what you're seeing in the paragraph. Okay. So it is the conscious power of the divine being, Shakti, which is both conceptively creative and dynamically executive of all the divine workings. This sentence means nothing. This, what you saw, the Shakti in the physical world as unconscious, is actually conscious. That's basically what he's saying. It is consciousness as well as energy, both. Okay, it is Chit as well as Shakti. Normally you would think that Chit, not necessarily Shakti. In our level, consciousness is not necessarily energy. They seem to be two different things. But in the third level, when you see the Ishvara consciousness, it is both. Okay. These three aspects and their powers base and comprise the whole of existence and all nature, and taken together as a single whole, they reconcile the apparent disparateness and incompatibility of the supracosmic transcendence, the cosmic universality, and the separateness of our individual existence. In other philosophies, they don't see the oneness of all these, but it is actually one. There is the transcendent, the divine who is outside the universe. But the divine is there in the universe also, the cosmic universality. This is known as pantheism in the West. And the separateness of our individual existence, you see the divine as personal within yourself. There is no incompatibility, but there is total incompatibility at the lower levels. But as you keep going higher and higher, they all seem to take on three different aspects, which are complementary aspects, not opposites. That's what Sri is saying. The cosmic universality and the separateness of our individual existence. The absolute, the cosmic nature, and ourselves are linked in oneness by this triune aspect of the one reality. Three levels, if you want: solid, liquid, gas. Okay? Transcendent, cosmic, and individual. For, taken by itself, the existence of the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman, would be a contradiction of the relative universe, and our own real existence would be incompatible with its sole incommunicable reality. If you station yourself in the mind, they seem to be all opposites. Form and formless can't be consistent with each other. Black and white cannot be consistent with each other. But in the higher levels, they are different aspects of the same thing. That's what he's saying. So it is the absolute, independent of all relatives. So which is the absolute, independent of all relatives? The transcendent. Okay. He's using the words, 4 or 5 words. Absolute, independent of all relatives, transcendental. The absolute, basing all relatives. Basing all relatives is the cosmic. Okay? Because it is there and it includes all the relatives. Finally, the last one, governing, pervading. Okay? That's the Ishvara consciousness. That is the individual aspect of the divine. Not the individual of the individual aspect of the divine. Constituting all relatives, there is nothing that is not the omnipresent reality. In observing the triple aspect and the triple power, we come to see how this is possible. If you see all together, then it is possible to see it as one. When we say ice, water, water vapor, it's very easy to understand because we know what it is. But when we speak of the divine as being impersonal, personal, as well as personal, impersonal, it's a little difficult to imagine. But if you use the image of the water, water vapor and the gas, okay, then it's possible to understand what he's saying. We got only 2 minutes and we did 2 paragraphs. The basic idea again, in very short, which I told when we began the chapter, I told you that first you can experience the divine as impersonal. You experience the divine as only peace, calm, a state of consciousness. Nobody is there. You may feel ananda, you may have power, you may have only peace and a sense of infinity, a sense of release, freedom. That's one aspect of the divine. You call it Brahman. Then you can also feel the divine as a person. That's the Purusha aspect of the divine. The Purusha, you see, and that Purusha can be at all levels, as we just said, the personal aspect of the divine. But this personal aspect of the divine is divorced from his Shakti. The world is different, Prakriti and Purusha seem to be separate. Okay? Then you go to the third level, there is no separation. He is the king, the emperor of his own kingdom, and he has created the kingdom and he is governing it. That's the Ishvara consciousness. That's what he's saying. So we can stop here. We've got 1 minute. If there are any questions, we can. The text is a little difficult because he's using philosophical language. But the basic idea is not that difficult to grasp. Okay?
Vandana,
Yeah, tell me.
the basic idea is like
Pardon?
there is an echo, no?
No, there is no echo. No, tell me.
Okay. The basic idea is you have to feel divine present in each and every being.
Okay, that's the individual aspect. But you have to also
That is the
see.
individual.
Huh?
Okay, that is a different from individual aspect. From individual aspect only we will grow, no, to the higher level.
Not necessarily. You can
Okay.
have the transcendent experience first. Remember the transcendent experience first. Okay?
Oh,
Yeah. It depends. It depends on the individual. The three aspects can be experienced by different individuals in different ways depending on their nature.
okay.
Yeah. So one, you can see the divine in all beings, you can see the divine in yourself. But when you see the divine in everybody else, it is a cosmic aspect. He is there in the cosmos. Okay. But you can see also the divine outside the cosmos. So all these things are possible. And depending on them, it is so convincing that all the philosophies are different. Okay. You have the Advaita philosophy, you have the Vishishta Advaita philosophy, you have the Bheda Bheda philosophy. They all differ one another and fight with each other. What I'm saying is the truth, nothing else. Okay. So, but Shindu is saying we have to experience the divine in all these things. That would be the total comprehensive understanding of the divine. That's why he calls it the integral yoga, Purna yoga. Okay.
But when they fight, it is like absolutely, how to say, total neglecting the reality. No, when you fight at that level, also you fight.
Neglecting
When you so
neglecting
much
the
attain
other
knowledge.
reality. Shilpa, they are neglecting
Yes.
other realities.
Ah.
The reality that they have experienced, they feel that that's the final.
But how can they be so stubborn after having acquiring so much knowledge? They become so stubborn that I am only right. I am only right. We are only right.
Does that not happen even at our level?
We are totally ignorant. I mean, our level is too low. But when they have achieved so much knowledge and this thing, they have so much knowledge. So they know no what is the reality and what is that. Then how can they be so stubborn?
So much knowledge of only one aspect. Okay.
Ah.
Every level to where you go, you experience only one aspect. This is something very understandable. Okay. When you go to one country, you know only that country, you know nothing else about other countries. When you go to the other country, then you feel that that's the only thing. So this is it is one way of explaining that is, it is so convincing, it is so real, the experience of the divine, that you feel that that's the final. That's the thing. It is so convincing. It's
But
a rare, huh? Yeah, it's a rare person who says,
Ah.
Tell me.
At that level, if somebody is so stubborn, and this will means the basic foundation itself is not properly laid, because stubbornness and ego and all these things, if they have not left, then how can their knowledge will be a true knowledge? First of all, you have to leave all these things, then only you gain the true knowledge will come only after that. No.
Shilpa, the basic idea of the gradations you must have. Okay, don't forget the gradations. At every level of gradation, you are convinced that that's the reality. Okay, there's a gradation of the animal level, there's a gradation of the mental level, there's a gradation of the moral level, there's a gradation of the spiritual level, and in the spiritual level also there are many, many gradations. At every level that you are, you feel that that's the truth. When you are in the gradations, you are not comprehensively understanding everything. Okay. You are exposed only to one aspect of the divine. So the stubborn that you're talking of and the ego, it's not ego. It is the understanding as you have experienced it. And the divine can be very, very convincing of what he is showing you. Okay. So when you experience one aspect, it is wonderfully satisfying. That's the thing. Okay. So 8:40. We stop. Oh, my student has come. Okay, we stop now.
Yes.
Merci
Have a
beaucoup.
nice day.
Au revoir.
Thank you, Rangan.
Yeah. I'll just note